Hi everyone. If we haven't met before, my name's Danielle, and today we're going to be talking all about my favorite flower, the amaryllis. We're going to be planting up some amaryllis bulbs, talking about how to grow them, what to do after they're done blooming, how to get them to rebloom. I'm also going to be showing you how to propagate them via offsets, and we're going to be talking about how to get the longest vase life from cut amaryllis flowers. So let's start by talking about the amaryllis bulb itself. Amaryllis bulbs are sold in centimeters, which is the measurement around the widest part of the bulb. So if we were to take a measuring tape and measure around here, we would get 34 to 36 centimeters. This is a 36 centimeter bulb. And the reason why that's important is because the bigger the amaryllis bulb, the more flowering spikes you can anticipate receiving from that bulb. This size bulb will give me 3 to even 5 flowering stems, whereas a smaller bulb that you might find in an amaryllis grow kit, those generally measure about 22 to 26 centimeters, and you can expect to get 1, sometimes 2 flowering spikes from that bulb. So the bigger the bulb, the more flowering spikes, and that will also influence the price of the bulb. So bigger bulbs are generally a little bit more expensive, but in my personal experience, and especially as a collector, I always invest in bigger bulbs. And all of these bulbs came from Longfield Gardens. Now, the other really cool thing about amaryllis bulbs is that they bloom along with their country of origins calendar. So bulbs that are coming over from the southern hemisphere, places like South Africa, Peru, and Brazil, will bloom in just 4 to 6 weeks after planting. These bulbs are primed and ready to bloom for us because when we're experiencing winter here in the northern hemisphere, they're experiencing summer in the southern hemisphere. So these bulbs have been harvested and held for a period of time and then shipped to the supplier who ships it to us. So this is a bulb that's really ready to bloom. It wants to bloom right away. On the other hand, if you purchase a bulb from the northern hemisphere, a place like Holland, right? Those bulbs are going to take about 8 to 12 weeks to bloom because we have the same seasonal calendar. When it's winter in Holland, it's winter in North America. So that's the main difference. And the way that you'll know whether a bulb is coming from the southern or northern hemisphere, if the country of origin is not listed there on the website or the packaging, is that southern hemisphere bulbs are usually marked early blooming, Christmas flowering, blooms in time for Christmas. That's how you know you're getting a southern hemisphere bulb. And like I say, those bulbs bloom quicker because they're primed and ready to go, about 4 to 6 weeks. So now we know we have a nice big bulb that's going to give us multiple flowering spikes. We know the country of origin is South Africa, so that tells us it's going to bloom in about 4 to 6 weeks. All that's left to do is have a lot of fun planting this amaryllis. Now you can plant amaryllis just simply by placing it on a bed of pebbles and then filling your vessel with water up to just the base of the bulb without touching the bulb itself. You're basically just trying to keep the roots in water. Or you can do what we're going to do together today, which is plant it in soil. And that is the method that I prefer because I like to rebloom my amaryllis each year. And I'll walk you through how to do that as well. So let's talk about the pot. Amaryllis like to be snug in their pots. So if I put my amaryllis in this pot, I'm looking for a pot that has about 1 inch of room between the edge of the bulb and the edge of the pot itself. So for a 36 centimeter bulb like this, I like to use a 6-inch terracotta pot. I just painted this pot green because I had used it for like a terracotta present a couple of years ago. I can show you some footage of that on the screen if you like. But it's 6 inches across, 7 inches deep. I do find a nice deep pot is also helpful. And this pot does have a drainage hole and a saucer. So I filled it up about halfway with pre-moistened potting soil. Now all that's left to do is just put our amaryllis bulb right in there. I have some more pre-moistened potting soil right here. And we're just going to fill in around the bulb and we're gonna leave the top third of the bulb exposed. And that'll help us with watering. If we were to bury the bulb completely, we might accidentally water into the bulb over and over and over again and cause it to rot from the inside out. And I have seen that happen before. I've dissected a bulb where it has rotted from the inside out because water was continuously being poured into the nose of the bulb. So just leave the shoulders exposed and leave the nose or neck of the bulb exposed as well. And then I just like to firm the soil in. Isn't it beautiful already? I think even just a plain amaryllis bulb, you know what it reminds me of? It's like a chocolate Easter egg. Does it remind anyone else of that? So now we have our bulb planted, and I'm just gonna water in, watering only around the perimeter of the bulb with tepid water. Just like this. Amaryllis don't need too much water. I give mine about a half a cup of water once a week. Now that measurement will vary based on the size of the pot, what the pot's made of, the temperature and humidity in your home, but amaryllis generally only need about a half a cup of water per week when they are actively growing. So now that we have the amaryllis all potted up, we can top dress it with something. So I'm gonna put some Spanish moss on here. What would also be beautiful is pine cones, stones. You could even put some grass seed down, have grass grow around it. How about maybe some pansies planted around it? You could put in some pine, some holly. Get creative, whatever your heart desires. And it's not necessary to top dress it either. So now that it's all potted up, it's watered in, I'm going to place this in an area that's warm and bright. I'm looking for an area that's between 68 and even 75 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not too hot for an amaryllis. Nice bright location. So pretty much I grow all of mine to start with on radiators. So I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen there. I don't think you can. But we have radiators all throughout our house. And so after I'm done planting the amaryllis, I just place them on the radiators. And let's kind of see the progression of an amaryllis. So they'll start like this, and then in just a short period of time, especially if it's a southern hemisphere bulb, you're gonna start seeing a lot of gray growth on it. You can see here I have a double nymph amaryllis, which is a white and red amaryllis, and the double nymph amaryllis. Any nymph amaryllis is a little bit shorter, and any double amaryllis makes a really excellent, long-lasting cut flower. But I'm kind of getting off track, aren't I? So you can see here, you can see the leaves are emerging, and you see this here that's coming to a point and it's a lot thicker. That's the bloom right there. Isn't that exciting? So that's what you can expect to see after just even a week or two if the bulb is from the southern hemisphere. Now after say about 4 weeks, it's gonna look like this. And sometimes amaryllis bulbs put up just the bloom stalks first, sometimes just the leaves first, sometimes they do it all at once. I cannot figure that out after 20 years of growing them. They just kind of do what they want. But don't worry about that if you see leaves or bloom stalks at first. As long as it's a brand new bulb and it's from a reputable company, you'll get that bloom stalk eventually. So once they look like this, and they've come to kind of this pencil stage right here, this is when I like to remove them from the heat and place them in kind of a cooler location to bloom. And I like to do that because by placing the amaryllis in a cooler area when they're about to bloom and in bloom, it will extend the life of the flowers. So once they're blooming, they're gonna look like this. These are Red Lion amaryllis right here. Now Red Lion is quite tall, so you see I did have to stake them and tie them to the stakes. Some of them I didn't have to do that. These bulbs, when I measured them, were 30 centimeter bulbs, and they are giving me about 2 flowering spikes. This one has 3. This one has 3 flowering spikes from a 30 centimeter bulb. So that is really good from a 30 centimeter bulb. I am really happy to see that. And let's take a look at this one because it's a really good example of how the amaryllis flowers on this stem take their turn blooming. They kind of bloom in succession. So when the amaryllis bloom starts, it'll look like this. It'll be tight like a pencil. Then it will gradually start to open. Then finally it will come completely horizontal, and each flower will take its turn blooming. So you can tell on this one, this flower bloomed first, then this one that's a little bit puffier will bloom next, and then finally this one that's tighter will bloom last. And they'll also fade in that same manner. So the first one here to bloom will be the first one to fade. Now this flower has not faded at all yet, but for the sake of the video, let's pretend that it did. If that flower had faded, I would just pop it off. I'll actually save this and wire it. But I would just continue to pop them off as they fade until the entire flowering spike is done blooming. And at that point, I'm even gonna sacrifice this flowering spike for you guys because we're about to talk about cut amaryllis. I'm going to cut it. So just like this, give it a nice cut. And remember, we're pretending that all these flowers have faded. And then I'm just going to continue to treat the leaves as a house plant until the summer, because you can easily get your amaryllis bulb to re-bloom. And getting an amaryllis to re-bloom, for me, it's probably the reason why I'm so passionate about these bulbs, because it's a one-time investment that will last decades. You can rebloom these bulbs over and over and over again. So I'm going to take you through that whole process now. I have lots of examples to show you bulbs in varying stages of growth. So let's say that all the flowers have faded. It's after Christmas. We've cut off all the bloom stalks. What we want to do is treat the foliage as a house plant. We want to keep it in that nice, warm, bright location, keep it watered, and then as soon as all danger of frost has passed and things have warmed up, right as you're about to plant out your tomatoes and your dahlias, put your amaryllis outside so that it can really soak up the sun and really take in all that energy through its leaves down to the bulb, where it's going to create another flowering stalk for you for next year. Now at some point late in the summer, you need to force it into dormancy if you want it to bloom at a certain time. You don't have to ever put it into dormancy. It will eventually rebloom for you without you forcing it into dormancy and then taking it out of dormancy. But if you wanted to say rebloom for Christmas time, you will need to kind of put it on a schedule. So the schedule I like to do is I put them out in May because that's after my first frost and when I plant my tomatoes. Sorry if you can hear Grace in the background. Then in about mid to late August, I bring them inside and put them into dormancy. Basically, you bring them inside, you put them in a cool, dark place, about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and you don't water them at all for 2 to 3 months. After 2 to 3 months have passed, which brings us into late October, early November, you bring them out of dormancy, you repot them or just freshen up the top, water them again, and as long as the bulb has been able to take in enough energy through its leaves down to the bulb and has formed a new flowering stalk for you, it will bloom again. So I have some that I just brought out of dormancy today. Let me show you what that looks like. So these bulbs have been living in my basement since mid-August. They have not been watered at all since that time. You can see the foliage has completely died back. It's been about 3.5 months, so they're ready to come out of dormancy and to rebloom again for us this holiday season. This one is Magnum. This is the amaryllis that was in the video where I did the Cocodama amaryllis. And this one right here is Flamenco Queen. I think I showed this one also in a video where I shared some of my favorites. So all you would do to clean this bulb up, and this one is really big, once they get about, say, 38 centimeters, sometimes they do need repotted into a bigger container. But literally all I'm gonna do is just clean up the bulb. I'm gonna remove those leaves. I'm gonna remove these kind of papery scales here. That's not totally necessary, but when you have all these amaryllis growing in your house, you can sometimes have an issue with fungus gnats. So the less organic matter, the better. So I'm just gonna peel off those old scales until I kind of see the white of the bulb. See that? Hope you can see that in the camera. So that's how my bulb looks all cleaned up. And now all I'm gonna do is, the first thing we did was we brought it out of that dark, cool environment. We're gonna water it in. Once again, just watering around the perimeter of the bulb. And now I'll do the exact same thing that I did with that brand new bulb. I'll just place it in a bright, warm location to wake up, and it's gonna put on new leaves and a new bloom stalk for us. It's really very, very simple to rebloom an amaryllis. And although it's not an exact science when it comes to getting them to bloom specifically for Christmas, the calendar that I did just share with you is what works best for me. So now let's talk about how to get the longest vase life from cut amaryllis flowers. I did purchase these particular amaryllis flowers from my wholesaler, and when they come in, they'll be in bud form to where they're just poofing out a bit. You'll be able to see what color the amaryllis is. You can generally see about how many flowers you're going to get from that stem, but they're pretty tight when you get them, and then they gradually open. These have been opening for 4 days, and I've had them in cool water. If you put them in cool water, it'll take them longer to open. If you put them in warm water, they'll open more rapidly. The first thing I like to do when processing amaryllis is to remove the pollen anthers. This will not only extend the vase life of the amaryllis flowers, but it will also prevent the shedding of pollen onto the petals, which sometimes can really ruin the appearance of the petals, especially if you're working with the dark colored amaryllis. So just exactly like how you would process a lily, take the pollen anthers, pull them straight away from the bloom head, and just dispose of them. And sometimes it's good to use a Kleenex for that. Amaryllis flowers are hollow, the stems are hollow, so it's good to give them a little bit of support. And what can also happen, and what almost always happens to mine, is that they either break at the base or they start to break and then curl upwards back towards themselves. So what I like to do to remedy all of these issues is first take a bamboo cane, insert it into the hollow part of the amaryllis stem, and I want to be gentle. These amaryllis stems are quite expensive, until it basically just touches that base of that bloom head. Then once that cane is all the way in there, I like to take my water here, and I'm going to fill up the stem with water. Once again, I'm just trying to help this amaryllis drink as much water as possible, get as much water as possible up to that bloom head. And then once I'm at the tip here, you can either just put it right into the vase, or you can take a little piece of cotton. Sometimes a whole cotton ball is a little bit too much. Just tear off a little bit of cotton, put it in the base there. So we're helping the flow of water up the amaryllis by doing this, but I still need to help the base of the stem itself not crack. So I'm going to take some clear Oasis floral tape. I just have a section here that's about, say, maybe 5 to 6 inches long. And I'm just going to preventatively tape there at the end of the stem so that the Oasis tape adheres to itself. And now that prevents it from cracking and curling back onto itself, which will kind of make it harder for the amaryllis stem to drink water if it's cracking and curling back onto itself. And this Oasis tape is really, really inexpensive. It's probably about $6 on Amazon. And now I'm ready to just put it into fresh, clean water. And I have to tell you, I've had some stems of cut amaryllis last for up to 3 weeks. You can also pop the heads off and wire them. I've experimented with just kind of leaving the heads on a table completely out of water, and for 24 hours, they were fine. So it's really just cool to use amaryllis as cut flowers. For me, I like them as cut flowers just as much as I like them as potted plants. You can get a whole new look by cutting the flowers. And you know, I think the moral of the story is with cut amaryllis, don't worry that you're decreasing the flower show by cutting them. It's not like a lot of flowers that we might cut outside, bring inside, and they fade in, you know, 3 to 5 days. These are really, really long-lasting cut flowers. Definitely give it a try. Maybe you have a really tall stem that breaks off. Cut it, put it in a vase, enjoy it in a powder room right next to your bed. You know, wouldn't that be wonderful? The last thing you see at night is just a clear vase with a cut amaryllis flower in it. Just gorgeous. Now let's talk about how to propagate amaryllis. There's a couple different ways that you can propagate amaryllis, and the only way I'm going to cover today is propagating via offsets, because that's the only one that I have personal experience with, where I've taken an offset from taking it off the mother bulb to having that offset bloom. So you would normally want to do this directly after you take your amaryllis out of dormancy, but it's a little bit later than that for this one. So let's just pretend that basically we're working with a dormant bulb. So here we have Magical Touch. I've showed Magical Touch a few years back in a video. Now you can see, here's the mother bulb, and you can see the daughter bulb right here. The daughter bulb is called an offset. So I'm gonna take this entire thing out of the pot, and then I'll show you some of these that I have been growing from offsets. So let's just take the whole thing out. So basically I just want to take all the soil away from the bulb so I can see what I'm working with. And it looks like we have a pretty nice size offset here. And I'm going to try to be pretty gentle with this. Of course, this would be better to do it outside, but it's 20 degrees outside today, so the dining room table will have to do the trick. So I just want to shake as much soil off as I can so I can see what I'm working with. So here we have the mother, here we have the daughter, or the offset, and we should be able to just pull this daughter right off of its mother. Some people say you should cut it. I always just try to gently pull it off. Oh, it came right off, friends. Look at that. Now, if that's not fun, I don't know what is. Okay, let me set it down 1 second. So basically, I'm just trying to untangle the daughter roots from the mother roots without injuring either of them. And remember, normally I would be doing this when they're dormant. This is just for the sake of showing you how to do it. And isn't that awesome? We have a new free baby amaryllis. We've got our mother here. I'll just repot her just like I did all the others, and she'll bloom again for me this year. This daughter bulb at this stage with 2 leaves so far, I would not anticipate that this baby amaryllis would flower this year. I would anticipate it flowering in maybe 2 years. And here's a daughter. You would pot it up just like we did all the other ones. Once again, taking the pot size into consideration. I wouldn't want to put my baby amaryllis into a really big pot like this. Once again, I would want to give it the size pot where it has about 1 inch between the edge of the bulb and the side of the pot. Well, friends, I think I better wrap up the video here, mainly because I made a ginormous mess on our dining room table and I still need to make dinner for my family, and I better clean this up before I do that. But let me know if you have any questions, comments about growing amaryllis, anything at all having to do with amaryllis. For me, it's really become a passion because it's something I love, you know, when you can get really zoned in on a certain flower and just try your best to learn everything that you can about that flower. For me, that flower is amaryllis. Maybe for you, it's orchids or zinnias or dahlias or lilies. But for me, there's something absolutely magical about these bulbs, these flowers. I hope you'll give them a try. I promise you, they are one of the easiest bulbs to grow with the biggest payoff at the end of the day. I want to wish you all a wonderful day and a very Merry Christmas. Bye.